do is call Matt Toner to the microphone. And I believe you've seen the process for the last 8 hours, so you know the drill. So I'll just welcome you and invite you to share your thoughts with us.
Super. Well, thank you very much. And if it's any relief to you folks here today, I've not been standing here for 8 hours waiting for you. So, yeah. But I will try to be quick because I do recognize this is the end of a very long day for you folks. Now, I guess I'm a startup guy. I've worked in the innovation industry for most of my career, not just here in Vancouver, but also in Toronto and New York, basically since the dot-com days. So that's given me a unique perspective on what's been happening in Vancouver recently. Now, I moved here about 10 years ago because of the potential that I saw in the city. And this was not just film and television, but also games, mobile, and new media. I really felt something special was going to happen here. And so I kind of, uprooted myself and came along here. And a few years ago, I started my own innovation-based company in Vancouver, downtown on Cambie and Hastings. And it's harder than you'd think. It's hard in general, but it's hard in Vancouver for different reasons. If you're in a place like New York, you have access to a lot of clients. If you're in a place like Silicon Valley, you have access to a lot of capital. Vancouver has unique strengths in terms of talent, but it's still kind of a hard place to go. Instead of focusing on your product, you're often focusing on the different government agencies you have to work with to kind of navigate success. But that's basically something that we're all facing here. At the same time, I'm also right now a visiting professor at the Center for Digital Media. It's a graduate program down here that's a union of the different universities in the city. And I've also taught at the Vancouver Film School, the Art Institute. I've lectured at UBC, Emily Carr, probably taught any place where people are thinking about digital stuff by this stage. And that's given me a pretty interesting perspective on what I'm seeing here in the city. In a nutshell, it really guts me when I kind of walk down the street, bump into a former student, talented, hardworking, intelligent person, and say, hey, what are you doing these days? And they'll say, well, I had a 3-month contract gig with this company, then a lot of nothing, then we closed down, and now I'm thinking I need to move back east, or I think I need to move to Seattle. And both places are actively recruiting here, or they go to Europe. And so our talent that we're training here locally, we're now exporting with no return. And that, to me, is very troubling, both as a professor, but also as someone who wants to hire these people, and they kind of get vectored away. It's a challenge because it's a long-term, shortcoming. We have to retrain them, If you have somebody who is an 8-year veteran, they move back to Montreal, well, you got to start over again. Vancouver has a reputation as an innovation cluster that's world-class, and there's no question that's true. But right now we're seeing a bit of a hollowing out. While visual effects is doing very well right now, it's a cyclical industry. Games, very much under attack. And this is very much a part of the identity of the innovation industry here in Vancouver. So this is worrying. We've heard about Radical and Rockstar Games closing. I just got some intelligence that another game company in town may be laying people off today. We haven't confirmed anything on that yet, but it seems like it's real. This is a problem, right? If you look at the trend lines from, let's say, 3 years ago, we're talking hundreds and hundreds of lost jobs and lost opportunities. The Rockstar relocation isn't just 35, 40 jobs that we've lost. It's the 150 jobs they're creating in Toronto that we're not getting. So this has an impact. You can't have this kind of brain drain going on and on over the course of years without seeing a negative effect. And sure, we've got new game companies that are coming up, but we have to nurture those companies. The small studios, get them from 2 or 3 people to 10 people to 30 people. So right now we have kind of a lost generation of game industry potential, and we need to kind of reverse this slide and put in place a bit of a floor. Now, I think the motion that was put forward by the mayor last week is a great step in that direction. And people in the industry are basically feeling the same. They actually find that quite heartening. Even though some people said this is a symbolic gesture, symbols have meaning. And when we see so much silence from other levels of government to what's happening here, even this first gesture, it counts for a lot. People are actually taking heart behind that. Now, as part of that motion, it's calling on the federal and provincial counterparts to do more work. I encourage that to continue because we need their attention to this matter, not just their silence or indifference. We need, as I said on the news this weekend, a coherent strategy. Guadalajara, Mexico has a coherent tech strategy. Right now, it's not clear that we have this coming together in Vancouver, or if it has, it's a pretty well-kept secret. And then the final thing I suggest is to take local action that can improve outcomes right away. Now, Vancouver Economic Development is doing a good job, and by the motion that's been put forward, you folks really seem to get it. So again, we're taking heart from that. But there's concrete things that we can do. And what I would suggest is, once you guys have moved forward with this motion, put together a little industry task force. Talk to the CEOs like me that are in the city, right? Big, small, medium size. crowdsource some ideas that could work? Is there some easy wins that we could have in 100 days? There's some harder wins that need more cooperation from different levels of government and the private sector. Let's not worry about those just yet, but let's at least start things moving in the right direction. So I guess I would just like to end by saying, please pass this motion today. I'm sure you will. It's the right idea. The innovation industry in this town didn't spring up overnight, but it could leave overnight, and none of us want that to happen. So thank you very much. I appreciate your time and attention today.
Thank you, Mr. Toner. You do have questions, starting with Councillor Affleck.
Hi, over here. Thanks for coming. I just, the evolution of industries, and this one, I think back in the mid-'90s when there was a lot of animation companies sort of popping up, and there were some gaming companies, and it kind of was an incubator city in a lot of ways. And I'm wondering if that's what Vancouver is more than, when a company gets to a certain size, they seem to leave in a lot of industries, especially tech industries. And I'm wondering if there's something about Vancouver that makes us different in how we create businesses. As an entrepreneur, you sort of see that. And are we a startup city and we have to kind of live with that? Can we be a place where head offices are?
It's an interesting question. In fact, it's an interesting perspective. Vancouver is a place of talent, and we do start a lot of good companies. The problem is those good companies leave, so you don't get a concentration of innovation, right? Steve Johnson's written a lot about this, saying that you need to have a lot of slow hunches, a lot of critical mass of people bouncing ideas off each other to make the next thing. We all probably have iPhones here. That didn't happen overnight. It's a lot of little people working together to push it forward. I look at Flickr as being kind of the Avro Arrow of the Vancouver tech scene. Flickr started here in Gastown, world-class social media company. It could have drawn a lot of talent to Vancouver and then thrown off other startups, much like Electronic Arts did back in the day. Instead, as you said, they got kind of picked up and moved south. Same thing with Zeit, same thing with Sumify. There's many of these companies that have this characteristic. The problem is every time we lose these companies, I'm not the only person to say this, Boris Wirtz, who's an angel here in town, said the same thing, we lose an anchor. And when we lose those anchors, we're always starting over again. So we're churning all the time, but we're not growing. So I think we need to recognize these early stage companies. I think Hootsuite is a great example. We should be in the business of mass producing guys like Ryan Holmes and women like Ryan Holmes, because they actually are creating these anchor companies that go from 30 people to 200 people in a year and actually change the frontier of what media is capable of doing. So how do you keep them here when you've grown them here? That's our challenge.
It's John. I've heard him speak, and it's his personal agenda to stay in Vancouver, and so it's a personal thing, I think, for him, a lot of it. But it is definitely a challenge to keep these companies here. So I like your idea of a CEO kind of brain thing. Would be really helpful, I think, to get some ideas of where we're going with this. Thanks.
Thank you. You also have questions from Councillor Carr, who's just over there.
Thanks, Madam Chair. Yes, I'm about to gain a son-in-law who works in your field. One of the things that he's talked about, and I'm interested in the feedback from you on this, is that sometimes projects expand, more people are hired, and there's a lack of space. There's simply a lack of buildings to move into that are equipped right in terms of their power and their air conditioning and that kind of thing. Is that your experience?
We had those challenges with my studio. We moved into Cambie and Hastings 2007 when the neighborhood was terrible, frankly. Like there were drug dealers using our front hallway as a commode. It was pretty terrible. And over the years, we had an old building. We kind of had to make upgrades and modifications, put in air conditioning because we had all the computers banging away, fix the freight elevator. It is a challenge. And right now, this summer almost blew out the front door because there were so many of us. We hired so quickly that literally we lost our space. That's manageable. Like it's tricky. If you're in a place like Discovery Park and you've only budgeted for so much square footage, and then you need to grow out of the incubator, that's a growing pain that can be difficult to manage. But there's so much great new spaces coming in as well. It's something which is usually easily handled. But again, it would be nice if there's somebody that CEOs like myself could talk to say, hey, I'm at 20 people and climbing. I need to make a move. Where can I go? Are there places or incubators that have space? But frankly, it's even more important for people that are 2 or 3 person companies. How do they get a roof over their head? Because I'll tell you, when my company finally moved out of my garage, we were way more productive. We grew way more quickly. But that was a big first step. That was kind of scary, right? So it's kind of the growth challenge across real estate is kind of meaningful. Okay,
that's great. Thank you, because it may be something that we can work on as a city.
Absolutely. Yeah,
thanks.
That'd be great.
Thanks very much for your presentation.
Okay, that's it for questions. And Mr. Toner, I would say that if you were speaking at 9:30, you probably would have had a long list of questions, but out of respect for the other speakers, we appreciate your time.
Not a problem. Okay. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.